Welcome back to the Cinemental podcast, where we usually discuss mental health in cinema and television and how it's portrayed. But today, we're doing a very special interim Cinemental podcast, specifically discussing the LA fires, its impact on the people who live there, and kind of what we think about it. Normally, my brother, Jeff Jones, who is a screenwriter and a professor of screenwriting, opens the show. But today, I, Dr. Joshua Jones, a general and forensic psychiatrist, am taking the lead to allow Jeff to hold space for the fires and to really talk to us about what it's like being there.
Yeah, so obviously, there's a lot of stuff people are seeing on the news. It's pretty bad. There's a lot of people who are suffering. There's a lot more to it that I think people don't understand. It's because you just can't experience it. The air quality is tremendously bad. It's not safe to go outside because we don't know what particulates are in the air. And if you think about this is not a direct correlation, but this was the issue with 9/11 was that when the buildings came down, there was so many toxic chemicals that were spewed, and it really affected a lot of people's health. This wasn't a forest fire. This fire burnt a lot of homes, a lot of things that were filled with petroleum products. So there's a lot of really toxic air that has been spewed, or a lot of toxic chemicals that have been spewed. So we can't really go outside right now, wherever you are in the city, and so that's been super stressful. A lot of people.
You're saying no matter where the fire is, and the fire's in pockets around the Southern California area. Yeah. You're saying that no matter where you are, the air quality, because these are essentially burn pits.
Right. It's not safe to go out and breathe. And I think that this will be the type of thing where we're not going to know the effects of for a couple of years, but I think that this will be like there was some real, post damage that was done by the air quality. So that's something that nobody's really talking about. It's weird to be right in the middle of it and see so much hatred online for the people of LA. That's really hard. We took in a friend the first night. Luckily her house wasn't burned down, but there was a fire half a block away from her, and she didn't have any power, and she had just had knee surgery, so we invited her to stay with us because we didn't want her to be without power. I do have a lot of friends who have lost their homes. It's awful. I feel for them immensely.
But pull back to you said something really interesting there about the hatred that you're seeing out there. How's that playing out?
I mean, the tricky thing is, I don't particularly like to be on social media during these types of events, and there is an amazing app called Watch Duty, which tracks the fires. But I was getting a lot of information off of TikTok, off of people who were doing live. There was a woman who was posted up in a condo. She had a great view of the Sunset Fire. And the Sunset Fire is the one where we were one away from evacuating. The fire was very close to our house. So we were one little group away from having to do a mandatory evacuation. And watching her live broadcast allowed us to watch the fire in real time. But then you would scroll and there would be somebody saying, "This is what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. And, all of these sinners, let them burn." And, there's a lot of eat the rich, and it's stuff like that. And it's like, we have become, it's just so much hate. And those are the things that get engaged with. And so those are the things that the algorithm shows. And so it's been really tough to see this incredible lack of empathy. And I don't even know if that's really indicative. It's just what I'm seeing as part of the algorithm, but that's a small percentage of people who are on TikTok, posting these nasty things. It just happens to be what everybody sees. And so we have this infrastructure set up to sort of spew this hatred.
So to divide, really.
To divide.
I mean, you had mentioned something to me before we decided to record this about feeling a disunionization of people.
Yeah, this is, and I want to talk about that later. If you don't mind, I want to get back to that. That's kind of the last thing that I want to talk about. But along with the lack of empathy, there has been a lot of blame, that we're seeing online, and it's driving me absolutely batty. This is obviously global warming. This is one of the effects of global warming. This was caused by massive amounts of rain, the type of rain that we have not seen in a long time, like decades. Created an immense amount of vegetation, leading to a drought. And so you had a lot of water and then a lot of drought. And then really high winds. And fires got started, and it was a culmination of events. It was an Aristotelian confluence of events, as Aaron Sorkin would say.
Yeah, but I mean, I could buy that it'd be global warming if this was happening like in winter or something.
Right, exactly,
Right,
in the middle of January.
Yeah.
So the primary thing to blame here is global warming. There's no society that could have prepared themselves for this tragedy. This was a perfect confluence of events. It was a massive fire and massive winds. I don't think any fire department in the world could be prepared, because you can't prepare for this worst eventuality. You prepare for a few fires here and there. You don't prepare for your entire world to be crumbling down. It's the same thing with how prepared we can be for earthquakes. We can only be so prepared, and then when it happens, we have to deal with it on the other side. But there's all this blame coming out, and it's a lot of blame that doesn't even make sense. In the first day, I was hearing blame that it's because there were DEI hires. What the fuck does that have to do with anything?
How would that play out exactly?
It's like,
yeah. Well, I mean, you also heard, from my perspective, far removed from the from the fires. Sorry, you hear these things like, oh, the hydrants didn't work. Well, there's a conspiracy. They must have cut that. No, just like you said, you can't run all the hydrants at the same time.
Right.
That's not how physics works.
That's exactly right. And so a lot of these things are just nonsense on their face. There was a story about trucks being withheld, because of emission standards. And this is the part that infuriates me. So the story was that trucks were coming down from Oregon and they were being held up in Sacramento because the trucks didn't pass emission standards. Absolutely not true. They went through a basic, are you a working truck analysis. They're like, okay, you're a working truck, go fight the fires. That's all that happened. And this story spread and spread and spread. And what really drives me absolutely crazy is that when you click on the people that are spreading it, they're not real people. There is active disinformation happening. And that's the part that is so insidious. That's the part that is so awful. And I'm going to talk about that when we get into the union, my rant about the union. Because the last thing I want to talk about with the blame is I cannot stand the hypocrisy that is happening. There's so many people. So California, and I don't want this to be about red versus blue or Democrat versus Republican, but California is a Democratic state. We're a blue state. And there's a lot of Republicans, saying this is Gavin Newsom's fault. It's the mayor's fault. It's this, it's that. They weren't prepared. They cut budgets, blah, blah, blah. You guys are the ones who want to cut taxes. You guys are the ones that are constantly asking us to spend less. Trump wants to dismantle the EPA. How are we supposed to spend more money when you want us to have less? If you actually want us to be prepared, let's pay more in taxes. Let's have more money for these things. How do we cut taxes and have the financial ability to fully fund a fire department, to fully fund police, to fully fund infrastructure? We need more money. We need more money to combat these things, especially as the climate continues to change and as there are more hurricanes and more fires and more, floods. We need more money. We need more money to solve these things. And we're going to have to come together. And if we're not going to stop pumping crap into the air that's going to make the planet warmer, then we need to spend more money on these disasters when they happen, because they're just going to keep happening.
Jeff, when you talk about hypocrisy there, it reminds me of something that you and I talk about on the podcast all the time. It reminds me of empathy, that folks who really lean into the hypocrisy, who want empathy when they're in trouble, but don't want to give it out when others are in trouble, have a lack of this empathy. So tell me what you're seeing there during the fires around empathy for others, or lack thereof.
The empathy part, Josh, is it's complicated.
Sure. As empathy is.
As empathy is. There's a lot of, hey, these people have a lot. Why am I going to be empathetic for someone who's lost their home? And I actually understand that. I understand that thinking. I disagree with it. And the truth is that we can have empathy for anyone. Losing your home is a big deal, no matter who you are. I mean, it's a massive deal, and it shouldn't be that we can only feel empathy for people who are, beneath us financially. Like, we can have empathy for everyone. There's such a difference between empathy and sympathy that we very rarely talk about. It's like, I don't necessarily need you to have sympathy for anybody, but you can at least have empathy that this is a human being who lost everything, and they lost memories, and they lost, pictures that their kids had drawn. Like, this is a huge deal to lose all these things. I feel a tremendous amount of empathy for everybody who has lost things. However, I also have a real hard time with what our response to this is going to be, given the fact that there were already in LA 75,000 people who were homeless.
Sure.
Before they were lost to fires. And the same people who lost their homes and are really, really sad about it step over homeless people on a daily basis. And I would just really implore us to solve both of these problems. Let's make people whole. Let's rebuild. Let's help people out who need the help. But let's help everybody out who needs help. This is one of the hills that I will die on. This is one of the, I can't accept that America is the greatest country in the world if we don't take care of our own.
Sure.
There are 653,000 people living in homelessness nationwide. That's up 12% from last year.
Yeah. Yep.
We cannot be a great nation and not take care of these people. We have to take care of our own.
And I interviewed...
And it is brutal. It's awful that people lost their homes, but it's also awful that people are experiencing homelessness.
Yeah, and I interview patients all the time who are homeless, and I ask them, how did you become homeless? And the number of them that have become homeless in the last couple of years is staggering. Yeah. And it is simple as, I got sick before and I had a bad medical bill and I couldn't catch up, and there was no humor on the side of the landlord, and these fires are going to render a lot of people permanently homeless.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree, Jeff. And look, we're not going to say on this podcast that we have the answers of how we do this.
Yeah, I actually do have the answer.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I'm willing to share.
Well, pardon me.
We have to just decide what's important to us, and then we need to pay for it. And it's really that simple. Do we want amazing schools? Okay, let's pay for it. Do we want amazing bridges and tunnels and roads? Great, let's pay for it. Do we want those to be the best in the world? Great, let's pay for it. It has a price tag, and then we just pay more taxes to get those things. I want everyone to have universal health care. I don't want there to be anybody who's experiencing homelessness. I want them to get all the help that they need. I'm willing to pay more in taxes to get those things. Now, I would really like for there to be some cuts to some of the administrative mumbo jumbo. I think everybody wants that. I think we all know that there's a lot of excess in government. I don't think anybody wants things to be inefficient. But I want my neighbor to have a home. I want the people around me to have help if they need mental health. And if we can decide that that's something that we all want, then we just have to pay for it. And it really just is that simple. But we've gotten so far away from looking at it that simply. And it's Democrat versus Republican. It's blue versus red. It's, California versus Florida or Texas. It's all this versus. Going back to like Mitch McConnell saying that his only goal was to make Obama a one-term president. What does that have to do with making somebody's life? What does that have to do with improving schools? It's like there's so, and this is such the line, and I hate that I'm about to say this, but there's more that we have in common that divides us. But I want to tell you a story because this is a little bit anecdotal. But I was on I did a cruise over Christmas, and I was on this cruise, and I was on the zip line tour with this guy who was obviously a Republican. He was just 100% obviously like a MAGA Republican. He was a cop, just this big bruiser of a man. And like, he totally reminded me of our uncle, who's one of my favorite people in the world, and is a MAGA Republican. And so I just start chatting him up, and we start talking about, guns and just stuff. We just start talking about stuff. And I kind of rib him a little because his wife wanted pictures. So I was like, I'm going to take a picture of you, dude. And, you better smile. And so like I took a picture of him and we were having a really good time. And so all of a sudden he just like won't leave me alone, where he just like wants to chat with me and he's having a great time. And his wife says like, hey, thank you. This is the first thing that my husband has enjoyed. And he just starts telling me all the greatest hits. He's like, oh, all the criminals now have all the rights. And I'm like, well, they're people, before they're criminals. Like they're not, because he was a cop. And so we start to get to the end and he's like, he says something and I'm like, well, I'm a Democrat. And he was like, what? He was just flabbergasted. And we had talked about our families and all these things. And he started in with the talking points. And I said this to him, and I swear to God I said this. I know this sounds like something you'd read in a movie, but like I'm a writer and I think about these things a lot. So I often have things prepared when I talk to people. And I've said this to someone before, but I said, hey man, you have your wife and you have your kid and you love them, right? And he's like, yeah. You want the best for them, right? And he's like, yeah. Then you and I have everything in common that we need to. And he kind of like nodded his head, and that was it. We were not going to talk about, Antifa, and critical race theory. Like we weren't going to get into those things because that wasn't what was important. We had been talking about our family, and all of a sudden he had this different view of a Democrat, of a liberal, of a far left liberal than he'd had before because he had the experience of talking to one-on-one. And so that man who's now friendly, and I saw him around the ship and he'd kind of nod and kind of smile, and now we had an interaction that was friendly. And if he saw me online, he'd probably tell me to go fuck myself, probably be like, I'm glad LA is burning. But we had, a human to human interaction. And it turns out, hey, we have all the things in common that we need. And I just think we have to restart, and we have to start from there of like, what are the basic things that everybody wants? Because even if you ask hardcore Republicans, do you want good police and fire and roads? They all say yes. So there are things that we can start with.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I think that one of the things that we all need to do is that we need to find someone that we think we disagree with, and we need to sit down with them over a cup of coffee, and we need to talk about why we believe the way we do. Not in a way in which we're trying to convince the other person to believe our way. And we have to really, really fight against the modern day urge to get offended.
Right.
And really listen. Why do you believe the way you do? Now let me tell you why I believe the way I believe. And I think that you're going to get down to the brass tacks, Jeff, that you pointed out, is I believe the way that I believe because I think this is the way to get my family healthy and safe.
Right. Yeah, but the the conversation isn't that anymore.
No.
And and it's heartbreaking. And
It's anonymous, it's online, it's aggressive, it's divisive.
Yeah, I think you had started asking me earlier, why is empathy hard? And what's funny about empathy is I actually don't think that empathy is hard. I think that empathy gets harder the further you are away from somebody.
Sure.
But the reason why, and this is the thing that a lot of Republicans don't understand about cities, it's not that Democrats move to cities. It's that people in cities see other people and want things for them. Because we get to know our neighbors because we're sort of like forced to. And so people in cities are like, well, I don't want that guy to suffer. I don't want that guy. We're just more communal because we see each other more. We see each other on the subway. But if you never see anybody and you're out in the boonies, then, it's like, I want to keep all my stuff. Why would I want to send stuff to someone I don't know? But like when you're in the cities, it's like, yeah, we all want there to be good transportation. We all want, good buses and bridges and subways, and so those things cost. So the closer that we are to people, the easier empathy is. But we're so divided now, and we're so far away from each other, and there are no repercussions for actions online, and so empathy is harder because it costs absolutely nothing to be mean. But
right,
if you hurt somebody's feelings in real life and you see how they're affected, it's really hard to be mean.
So are you positing that that social media is allowing us to erect more barriers between real community, real union with each other than it is breaking them down?
It's hard to say because I love the fact that I can go on Facebook and reconnect with all my friends from Kelso. It's been one of my favorite things about Facebook. And so there is something that's like really great about social media. But the thing with social media is it is training us to be unempathetic.
Say more.
We have a fight or flight reflex, correct? I mean, this is something we've talked about a lot. Fight, flight,
sure.
freeze.
Fight,
blah, blah.
flight, freeze.
So when we see things that bother us, we're more likely to engage with it than if we see things that sort of like, make us happy or bring us joy. Like
we're more likely to have a reaction. We're more likely to have a reaction that pushes us to want to refute it.
Right.
If we see something that we disagree with. Yes.
Okay. So that's engagement.
Right.
And all of these programs, rightfully so, track engagement, and they want to grow, they want to expand, and they have competitors just like anybody else, so they want to grow. And so the things that get clicks are the things that get spread, and that's the way that the business model works. But our reactivity to all the negativity is training us to be less empathetic, and that's a real problem because I think that we are seeing people get less empathetic, and when we're voting, we're not thinking about the people who are right in front of us.
It makes sense.
We're voting unempathetically.
That makes sense because you are getting reinforcement online. You are getting additional likes or dislikes. It probably doesn't matter which one.
Right.
The more controversial You are.
That's
the
right.
more that you tweak people, the more you're going to get, additional pings to your own dopamine centers. I mean, reinforcement doesn't necessarily need to be negative or positive. It just needs to be reinforcement.
Yeah. And so, the thing that I would like to see people do is just don't respond. If you see things that are negative, just don't respond. Because a lot of the times what you're responding to isn't even a person, it's a bot. So much of the misinformation is being spread. Even like so much of the, like, obviously, like, I see a lot of, I'm a Democrat. I see a lot of, inflammatory things posted by MAGA. A lot of them aren't even people. I don't even know where they're coming from, but you click on their profile and it's like, it's not even a real person. This is clearly somebody with an agenda trying to inflame people. It's not even a real person that I'm getting mad at.
Yeah.
It's just someone's trying to create anger.
Yeah. And these programs are making money off of our division.
They're making money off of our division and off of our anger. And so the thing that I think people need to do is start liking the cat videos and start not responding to the negative stuff that we see online. You're not doing any favor. You're not changing anybody's mind. Not a single mind has ever been changed in an argument on Facebook. Not a single one. No matter how much of a mic drop you think that, like, you're delusional, dude, here's the link. That person did not click that link and they didn't change their mind. So let's just stop. Let's just stop doing that. And let's make it so that the algorithm is like, hey, I'm going to send this person more cat videos. I don't know why the algorithm knows me so well, but I like, for whatever reason, watching pimple pop videos late at night. So, like, after 9 p.m., all I get on TikTok are pimple popping videos, and I'm like, this is so satisfying. It's the weirdest thing, but it's like that.
Because after 9 p.m. is big person winding down time, and that's how you wind down, is pimple popping videos.
Something along those lines.
All right,
anyway,
so
we're
Jeff,
far afield from the fires.
No, this has been a wide-ranging conversation. Obviously, very cathartic for you, and I think everybody who's down there in the fires really needs some kind of catharsis. Really needs some kind of relief. I mean, I have a colleague I spoke with today who had to evacuate because of the fires, and it's brutal. But we're going to continue to go through brutal stuff together. And I think what you point out is we have to figure out a way to do it better. Right. What we're doing right now isn't working. And what I tell patients all the time and my own family members is, if you like the results you're getting, great, don't change a thing. But if you don't, you have to look at yourself and change something, because that's the only thing you can control. So with that, Jeff, what do you want to change? What should people change right now to make this a little better?
One, they get off, not get off of social media. Just interact with the more positive parts of social media, because that's going to change the algorithm. Go out and talk to your neighbor. Have more of a relationship with your back door's opening. I don't know what's going on.
It sure did. Dog came in.
Okay, totally fine. Go out and talk to your neighbor more. Be more involved. All the typical things that we talk about that don't fucking go anywhere. I'm just not having a good day.
Yeah, well, it's okay to not have a good day, Jeff, and that's really hot tent, actually, because we're coming to the end of the Cinemental podcast here, and this was a lot. So, here's something. Leave us with a thought about being prepared, because I think that's something you want to talk about too.
Yeah, I mean, here's one thing that I think everybody needs to think about. There's a reason why, like, I don't live in the Palisades, and there's a reason why, like, we've thought about even moving to Lake Arrowhead, and Lake Arrowhead did not get hit by fires, but, like, wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they did. People need to get prepared, and it's not people in LA, it's people everywhere. No matter where you live, there is something global warming-esque that is coming for you. So everybody needs to be prepared. And when these things happen, the blame game has got to stop. I just think, like, when New Jersey got hit, Obama called Chris Christie and was like, "What do you need?"
Yeah.
It was like there was no blame. There was just help. It was just help.
Yep.
And it's like, why? Why can't we get back to that? And and it's and I don't want to again say like Democrat versus Republican, but it's like it's some guy from Ohio, some representative was like, well, we're only going to give them help if they like agree to certain things. And it's like, when someone's house is burning down, you don't haggle over the price of your hose, and it's like, dude, you don't even understand. Like California is like the 5th largest economy in the world. Like we send out $1.25 and get $1 back, and most states send out 75 cents and get $1 back. Like California's paying for most of America, and we don't whine about it. We don't complain. Like we get it. We get it. We want to pay for our fellow man. And that's what's so hard, I think, for Californians now is like we want to pay. We want to pay more for people to live a better life. Like those are our values. And somehow we're the enemy. Somehow we're demonized for it.
Well, you're not demonized here, Jeff. And you know what? With that uplifting Cinemental podcast that we've just dropped, I think we're going to wrap it there. So
yeah.
Thanks as always for watching or listening to Cinemental and our coverage of the Los Angeles fires. If you like this episode, please subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also watch clips of Cinemental on YouTube, where we'd love to hear what movie or topic you'd like us to cover next. You can also watch Jeff's companion series, The One Thing, where he takes a deeper dive into screenwriting. Both are available on the Large and in Charge channel on YouTube. And you can follow me, Josh Jones, on Blue Sky at USA Psychiatrist and on Instagram at America's Psychiatrist. This has been a Large and in Charge production. For my brother Jeff Jones, I'm Josh Jones, and we will see you next week.